All right, let's jump right in. For as long as there have been markets, there's been this one massive, nagging question. Can professional money managers really, consistently beat the market? Or is it all just luck? Well, today, we're going to unpack some incredible research that completely flipped this whole debate on its head.
So here it is, the big question. Are there actually stock-picking geniuses out there? Managers who have some kind of special skill? Or are the ones who hit it big just lucky? The folks who happen to be in the right place at the right time?
For a very long time, the academic world had a pretty simple answer to that question. Nope. The consensus was that real, repeatable skill was basically a myth. The evidence seemed to show that a manager who had a fantastic year was almost guaranteed to be just average or even worse the next. The case, for all intents and purposes, seemed closed.
And this dominant theory, it really centered around something called the hot hands myth. The idea that a manager on a winning streak would just keep on winning? Well, that was seen as a total illusion. Let's dig into why.
This idea was really cemented back in 1997 by a hugely influential paper from a researcher named Mark Carhart. He argued that pretty much any skill you thought you saw could be explained away by two really simple things: luck and costs. And his finding? It basically became the law of the land in finance. Any sign of a manager consistently winning was just a mirage.
Carhart's argument was just so powerful because it was so simple. He said it all boiled down to two things. First, momentum. A manager might look like a total genius for a year, but it was just because they happened to own a bunch of stocks that were already soaring. Not skill, just lucky timing. And second, for any of the longer-term winners, it wasn't that they were better stock pickers, it was just that their funds had lower fees. And once you accounted for those two things, momentum and costs, poof, the so-called skill just completely disappeared.
But what if the entire investigation was flawed from the very beginning? What if all these researchers were comparing apples to oranges, and by doing that, they were missing the very thing they were looking for?
So, to really get what's going on here, we have to talk about something called investment style. This is absolutely crucial. See, not all funds are playing the same game. Some managers only focus on giant, fast-growing tech companies. Others are out there hunting for tiny, undervalued industrial stocks. These are fundamentally different strategies, different styles.
And that right there, that was the huge critical flaw in all the old research. By just measuring all funds against each other, they were completely ignoring these massive differences. They were just throwing all these different styles into one giant pot and judging them by a single one-size-fits-all standard.
This chart just makes the problem so clear. When you look at the top-performing funds in any given year, you see this really striking pattern. A huge chunk of them, an overwhelming majority, come from whatever investment style happened to be hot that year. So the question is, was the manager a genius, or did they just happen to be running a small-cap value fund in a year when all small-cap value funds did great? The old method couldn't tell you the difference.
I mean, think about it this way. It's like trying to find the best athlete by throwing baseball players and basketball players into the same group and only counting points scored. It's just a meaningless comparison, right? You have to judge people against their direct peers.
So how do you fix this mess? Well, in 2001, a paper by Melvin Teo and Sungjin Wu came along and proposed a new way forward. They basically developed a new forensic tool, one designed to isolate true skill from all that background noise of style performance.
The idea was so elegant and so powerful. Just stop comparing everyone to everyone. Instead, measure each fund manager only against the other managers who are playing the exact same game, the ones inside their same specific investment style. And here's how it works. It's actually really straightforward. First, you take a fund's total performance. Let's say it returned 12%. Then you find the average return for all the other funds in its specific category. Let's say the average large-cap growth fund returned 10%. You subtract that style average from the fund's return, and that 2% that's left over, that is the style-adjusted return. It's a much, much cleaner signal of the manager's actual contribution.
So, what happened when they took this new yardstick and applied it to the data? When they reran the entire investigation, but this time looking for skill in the right way? Well, they found something that the old methods had completely and totally missed.
The results were frankly stunning. When you measured correctly against direct peers, the outperformance of the best managers didn't just disappear after a year. It persisted. In fact, it could last for as long as, get this, 6 years.
This was a radical discovery. It suggested that decades of financial research might have been totally contaminated by a simple measurement error. Let's look at the difference side by side because it's pretty stark. Okay, so with the old method using just raw returns, any sign of skill was like a ghost. It was fleeting. A top fund one year was an average one the next. But using the new style-adjusted method, a completely different, much clearer pattern emerged. Top performers tended to stay top performers, and yeah, bottom performers tended to stay at the bottom for years on end.
And here is the real kicker. This newly discovered persistence, it couldn't be explained away by those old arguments from Carhart. It wasn't because of momentum, and it wasn't because of fees. By filtering out the noise of the style, the researchers had finally found a clear signal of genuine, durable stock-picking skill, the missing piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so this is a really fascinating academic detective story, right? But what does it actually mean for us in the real world? Why is getting the right yardstick so incredibly important? There are a few really big takeaways here. The most obvious one is that how you measure something can completely change the answer you get. It's as important as what you measure. It also shows that to find real talent in any field, really, you have to compare people to their true peers. It also makes that old debate about active managers versus passive index funds a lot more complicated. And maybe most importantly, it suggests that true skill, that elusive ability to pick winners, might not be a myth after all.
Ultimately, this is about way more than just finance. It's a really powerful lesson about how we evaluate anything. Whether you're judging an employee, a company, or even just your own progress, choosing the right benchmark, the right peer group is absolutely essential if you want to make an accurate and fair assessment.
And that kind of leaves us with this final, pretty provocative thought. For decades, some of the smartest minds in finance were using a flawed ruler to measure skill. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where else, in our lives, in our businesses, in our society, are we confidently using the wrong yardstick to measure what truly matters?